I thought I was racing to save my brother, but after one gas stop, I opened the backpack my parents had prepared and saw something that silenced every thought in my head. I took it straight to the police station. The moment the officer saw it, his face went white, recognizing a device from his worst cases. That is when I realized the terrifying truth. The trap was never meant for my brother. It was meant for me. My name is Samantha Rourke, though almost everyone in my life calls me Sam. I am 33 years old, and until this morning, I defined my life by the organized chaos of logistics. I work as an operations manager for Canyon Crest Logistics in Henderson, Nevada. My job is about control. It is about knowing exactly where a shipment is, when it will arrive, and who is responsible for it. I am good at it because I do not like surprises. I like spreadsheets. I like confirmed delivery times. I like knowing that if I follow the process, the result is guaranteed. But nothing could have prepared me for the chaos that tore through my phone line at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. I was standing in my kitchen, the desert sun already bleaching the color out of the morning through the blinds. I had a mug of coffee in my hand, black, 2 sugars. The silence of the house was a luxury I had earned after a 60-hour work week. Then my phone buzzed against the granite countertop. The screen flashed Mom. I answered with a smile, expecting the usual weekend check-in, maybe a complaint about the neighbors, or a question about when I was coming over for dinner. "Sam!" Her voice was a jagged tear in the quiet. It was not a greeting. It was a scream that had been choked back and was now breaking free. "Mom? What is it? What's wrong?" I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "It is Evan," she sobbed. The sound was wet and terrifying. The sound of a mother who has seen something no mother should see. "He has been in an accident, a bad one. Oh God, Sam, it is bad." My stomach dropped, a physical sensation of falling even though my feet were planted on the tile floor. Evan, my baby brother, 24 years old. He was supposed to be in Phoenix for a job interview, or at least that is what he had told me a few days ago. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice snapping into crisis mode. "Is he alive? Mom, talk to me." "Prescott," she gasped. "He is at the hospital in Prescott. They are taking him into surgery now. You have to go. Sam, Dad and I, we can't drive fast. My eyes are bad at night, and we are falling apart here. You have to be there for him." "I am going," I said, already moving. I set the coffee down so hard some of it sloshed onto the counter. "I am leaving right now." "Wait," she said, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "The bag. Do not forget the bag." I paused, one hand on my car keys. "What bag?" "I packed a backpack for him," she said hurriedly. "You know how he is. He never has his insurance card, his ID, his chargers. I packed everything he needs. I had Linda drop it off at your place last night on her way to the bingo hall. It should be on your front porch, behind the planter. Please, Sam, he is going to need it when he wakes up." It was a strange detail to focus on in the middle of a tragedy. But panic makes people fixate on small things. I did not question it. I did not ask why she had assumed I would be the one going to the hospital before the accident even happened. I did not ask why she had packed a bag for a trip Evan was already on. I just wanted to help. "Okay," I said. "I will get it. I am leaving now. I will call you from the car." I hung up and ran out the front door. Sure enough, tucked behind the large ceramic pot where I kept a dying aloe vera plant, there was a black tactical backpack. It looked new. I grabbed the handle and swung it up. It was heavy. That was the first thing that registered, a fleeting data point that my brain filed away for later. It did not feel like a bag filled with socks, underwear, and a phone charger. It felt dense. It had a center of gravity that shifted awkwardly as I ran to my SUV. I threw it onto the passenger seat, where it landed with a dull, solid thud that sounded more like a bag of tools than a bag of clothes. But I did not stop to unzip it. I did not stop to think. Evan was in surgery. Evan was hurt. I reversed out of my driveway, tires screeching slightly on the asphalt, and gunned it toward the highway. The drive from Henderson to Prescott was not short. It was going to take me nearly 4 hours if I pushed the speed limit, which I intended to do. I merged onto the freeway, the speedometer climbing past 80 miles per hour. The landscape outside my window blurred into a smear of beige and brown. The stark beauty of the Mojave Desert completely lost on me. All I could see was Evan's face. I remembered him as a kid, scraping his knee and crying until I put a bandage on it. I remembered him last Christmas, looking thinner than usual, his eyes darting around the room like he was looking for an exit. I reached for my phone and hit redial on Mom's number. I needed updates. I needed to know if he was out of surgery. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail, I cursed, tossing the phone onto the center console. I waited 5 minutes and tried Dad. The same thing. 4 rings. Then his gruff voicemail greeting telling me to leave a message. "Pick up," I hissed at the windshield. "Damn it, pick up the phone." I tried Evan's number, knowing it was futile, but hoping that maybe, just maybe, it was all a mistake and he would answer, laughing, straight to voicemail. The silence in the car began to feel oppressive. The air conditioning was blasting, but I felt a cold sweat prickling at the back of my neck. Why were they not answering? If your son is in surgery, you sit by the phone. You wait for family to call. Unless something worse had happened. Unless the doctor had walked into the waiting room with that look on his face. No, I refused to let my mind go there. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I looked over at the backpack sitting on the passenger seat. It sat there like a passenger, silent and imposing. It slid slightly as I took a curve on the highway, the heavy weight of it pulling against the fabric. Why is it so heavy? The thought bubbled up again, more persistent this time. Mom had said she packed things he needed. What did he need? Insurance papers? A change of clothes? Maybe some food? Mom was always trying to feed us. Maybe she had packed cans of soup or something ridiculous like that. That had to be it. She was panicked, irrational, packing heavy items because it gave her a sense of control. My mind drifted back to the last few months. My interactions with my parents had been strained. They had been acting strange, jumpy. I remembered a dinner 3 weeks ago. Dad had been drinking more than usual. His face flushed. He kept bringing up the topic of life insurance. He had asked me, hypothetically, if I knew where all my important documents were. "You never know, Sam," he had said, slurring slightly. "Life comes at you fast. You need to have your beneficiaries in order. Risk prevention. That is the name of the game." Mom had just sat there, picking at her pot roast, not meeting my eyes. She had asked me about my driving habits. "You drive so much for work," she had said. "Do you take the back roads? Or the main highways? Which is faster to get to Arizona if you ever had to go?" At the time, I thought they were just being parents, aging, worried, perhaps facing their own mortality and projecting it onto me. But now, speeding down a lonely stretch of highway with a mysterious heavy backpack on the seat next to me, those conversations felt different. They felt like puzzle pieces I had been too busy to put together. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of paranoia. This was stress talking. This was the adrenaline making me crazy. My brother was hurt. My parents were terrified. That was the only truth that mattered right now. "Just let him live," I whispered to the empty car. "Please, God, just let Evan be okay. I will pay for his rehab. I will let him move in with me. I will do whatever it takes." I made promises to the universe, bargaining with fate. I would be a better sister. I would work less. I would call more. Just let him survive. I checked the time. I had been driving for over an hour. The fuel gauge was dipping below the quarter tank mark. I had left in such a rush that I had not checked the gas. Ahead, the shimmering heat waves rising off the asphalt revealed a tall, lonely sign. A gas station. It was one of those isolated stops in the middle of nowhere, just outside of Kingman, Arizona. The kind of place that looked abandoned until you saw the flickering neon open sign. I needed gas. I could not risk running out in the middle of the desert. I signaled and took the exit, the gravel crunching under my tires as I slowed down. The station was desolate. A single old sedan was parked off to the side. and the pumps looked like they were from the 90s. I pulled up to the pump and put the car in park. My hands were trembling as I reached for my credit card. I looked at the phone again. Still no missed calls. Still silence. I looked at the backpack again. I needed to find Evan's insurance card. If I got to the hospital before Mom and Dad, the reception would ask for it. Mom said she packed his papers. It would save time if I had them ready in my hand when I walked into the ER. I unbuckled my seatbelt. The silence of the desert was vast and eerie outside my window. And then, a thought struck me. It was a cold, sharp thought that had nothing to do with the heat outside. If Evan was in surgery, and my parents were at the hospital, why had nobody called me with an update for over an hour? Why was the radio silence so absolute? And that backpack, why did it feel less like a care package and more like a burden? I looked at the dusty gas station sign creaking in the hot wind. What if this is fake news? The question hung in the air, ridiculous and terrifying. Why would they lie? But the seed was planted. I reached for the backpack, my fingers brushing the zipper. I did not know it yet, but the moment I pulled that zipper, my life as Samantha Rourke, the operations manager who liked control, was going to end, and something else was going to begin. The heat at the gas station near Kingman was not just a temperature, it was a physical weight. It pressed down on the roof of my car and radiated off the cracked concrete in shimmering, oily waves. I stepped out of the air-conditioned sanctuary of my SUV, and the dry air instantly sucked the moisture from my skin. The smell was distinct and nauseating, a mixture of unburnt fuel, melting tar, and coffee that had been sitting on a burner since dawn. I walked to the small convenience store attached to the pumps, my legs feeling stiff and detached from my body. The bell above the door chimed with a cheerful ding that felt completely out of place given the dread churning in my stomach. I bought 2 large bottles of water. My throat felt like sandpaper, and my hands shook as I handed the cashier a $20 bill. I did not wait for the change. I just wanted to get back to the car. I just wanted to get to Evan. Walking back to the pump, I scanned the horizon. There was nothing but scrub brush and red dirt stretching out toward the mountains. The isolation was absolute, usually. I found the desert peaceful, but today it felt like a cage. I climbed back into the driver's seat and locked the door immediately. It was an irrational instinct, but I obeyed it. I cracked the cap on one of the water bottles and drank half of it in one long, desperate gulp. The water was lukewarm, but it helped settle the nausea rising in my throat. I looked at the dashboard clock. I was making good time, but not good enough. If Evan was in surgery, every minute mattered. Then my eyes drifted back to the black tactical backpack on the passenger seat. I needed to be efficient. That was who I was. Samantha Rourke, the woman who organized logistics for a living. When I walked into that hospital in Prescott, I did not want to be fumbling for information. I wanted to walk straight to the intake desk, slap down his insurance card and his ID, and demand to see my brother. Mom said the papers were in the bag. I leaned over the center console. The bag sat there, bulging slightly at the bottom. It looked innocent enough. It was just black nylon and zippers. But as I reached for it, that same sense of wrongness returned. It sat too heavily on the upholstery. I grabbed the metal pull tab of the main compartment zipper. It made a sharp, rasping sound as I slid it open. The noise seemed deafening in the quiet car. The first thing I saw was a gray t-shirt. It was one of Evan's favorites, a faded band shirt he had worn since college. Seeing it caused a fresh wave of tears to prick at my eyes. It smelled like him, a mix of laundry detergent and cheap body spray. Beside it was a pair of socks, rolled into a tight ball. Mom had packed the basics. Of course she had. I reached in, sliding my hand under the t-shirt to feel for a folder or an envelope, anything that felt like paperwork. My fingers brushed against something cold. It was not paper. It was not plastic. It was metal. Painted, smooth, cold metal. I frowned, confused. I pushed the t-shirt aside, digging deeper, shoving the soft fabric out of the way to see what was buried at the bottom of the bag. My hand froze. My breath stopped in my chest. Resting at the base of the backpack, nestled snugly beneath the layer of clothes, was a rectangular black box. It was about the size of a thick hardcover book, but it looked industrial. It had no branding, no logos, just matte black casing. And on the side facing me, there was a small, singular LED light. It blinked red. Once. Silence. It blinked red again. A thin yellow wire ran along the edge of the box, disappearing into a lump of gray putty that looked like modeling clay, taped securely to the side of the metal casing. I did not scream. I did not gasp. My brain simply short-circuited. For a split second, I stared at it, trying to make it make sense. Maybe it was a spare battery for a laptop. Maybe it was some kind of car part. But I worked in logistics. I dealt with hazardous materials. I knew what battery packs looked like. I knew what electronics looked like. This looked like death. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I yanked my hand back as if the metal had turned white hot. I scrambled backward, jamming my spine against the driver's side door, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack the bone. Blink. The red light pulsed again, a steady, indifferent rhythm. I stared at the backpack. The t-shirt had fallen back partially over the box, half hiding it, but I knew it was there. I could feel its presence like a gravity well, pulling all the oxygen out of the car. Panic, raw and animalistic, flooded my system. I looked out the window, scanning the gas station again. Was someone watching? Was there a man with a remote standing behind the pumps? Was there a car parked on the ridge? There was no one, just the heat haze and the empty road. That was terrifying in a way I could not articulate. If there had been someone watching, at least I would have a target for my fear. But the emptiness meant that whatever was happening in that backpack had been set in motion long before I arrived here. It was a mechanism, a timer, a trigger. My first instinct was to open the door and run until my lungs burned, get away from the car. But then I thought of the police. If I ran, and this thing went off, nobody would know. Nobody would know what I had found. I needed to get this away from me, but I also needed to show someone. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely control them. I forced myself to lean forward again. Every instinct in my biology screamed at me to stay away. But I had to close the bag. I could not drive with that red eye blinking at me. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and grabbed the zipper. I tried not to look at the wire. I tried not to think about what the gray putty was. I pulled the zipper shut. The rasping sound was no longer loud. It sounded like the hiss of a snake. I could not leave it on the seat. If I braked hard, if it fell. I took a breath that shuddered in my chest. I grabbed the top handle of the backpack. It was heavy. My God, it was so heavy. How had I thought this was just clothes? I lifted it gently, treating it with the reverence one would give a sleeping cobra. I lowered it slowly, agonizingly slowly, onto the floorboard of the passenger side. When it settled on the floor mat, I let out a sob I did not know I was holding. I gripped the steering wheel. My palms were slick with sweat. I looked at the road ahead. The sign for the highway pointed straight toward Prescott, straight toward the hospital, straight toward where my parents said Evan was dying. But I could not go there, not now. I remembered a green sign I had passed about 4 miles back. It was a standard municipal sign, white text on a green background. Mojave County Sheriff's Substation. Next right. I put the car in reverse. My foot slipped off the brake pedal for a second and the car jerked. I gasped. Glancing down at the floorboard, the bag did not move. I backed out of the gas station. Turning the wheel sharply, I did not get back on the highway toward Prescott. I turned around. I headed back the way I came. As I drove, the speedometer creeping up, my mind began to race, connecting dots I had refused to see earlier. The weight of the bag, the urgency in my mother's voice. I packed a backpack for him. Don't forget the bag. Take the car. Don't fly. The realization washed over me, cold and absolute. If that box was what I thought it was, and my gut told me it was exactly what I feared, then this was not a random act of violence. A random bomber does not plant a device in a specific backpack and have it delivered to a specific house for a specific driver. This was a trap. And for a trap to work, the hunter needs to know the prey's habits. They knew I would be home on a Saturday morning. They knew I would pick up the phone. They knew that if they told me Evan was dying, I would not hesitate. They knew I would take my car because they told me to. They knew I would be driving alone on this stretch of highway, hours away from the city, hours away from help. They had engineered my route. They had engineered my panic. I looked down at the black shape on the floorboard. It sat there in the shadows, silent and deadly. My parents had packed that bag. My mother had told me to take it. A wave of nausea hit me, stronger than before. I had to swallow hard to keep from vomiting. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. Parents do not do this. Mothers do not pack bombs for their daughters. But the box was real. The wire was real. The blinking light was real. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned the color of bone. The desert landscape rushed by, a blur of meaningless scenery. I was no longer a sister rushing to a hospital. I was a courier carrying my own destruction. I had walked into a story they had written for me. They expected me to be a tragedy on the news tonight. Woman dies in tragic car explosion, on way to visit injured brother. It was a perfect headline. It was clean. It was sympathetic. But I was not dead yet. I pressed the accelerator. The engine roared, a sound of defiance in the empty desert. I was not going to Prescott. I was going to the police, and I was bringing the evidence with me. I whispered to the empty car, my voice trembling but hardening with every mile. I just stepped into something bigger than an accident. I walked into the Mojave County Sheriff's substation like a woman walking to the gallows. The building was a squat, beige block of concrete that looked more like a failing dental practice than a bastion of law enforcement. The air conditioning inside hit me with a blast of artificial chill that made the sweat on my back turn to ice. The lobby was quiet. There was a row of plastic chairs bolted to the floor and a glass partition separating the waiting area from the duty desk. A deputy was sitting behind the glass. He was an older man with silver stubble and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He was typing slowly with 2 fingers, looking bored. I approached the window. The backpack was in my right hand. My arm muscles were screaming from the tension of holding it steady, terrified that a single jostle would turn this room into a crater. I set the backpack on the counter. The heavy thud it made against the laminate surface echoed in the small room. The deputy looked up over his glasses. "Can I help you, miss?" I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. My throat was constricted, as if a hand were squeezing my windpipe. I swallowed hard and leaned in close to the glass, my face inches from the speaker holes. "I need you to look at this," I whispered. "Please, do not ask me to move it again." The deputy frowned, his boredom flickering into mild annoyance. "Ma'am, if this is a delivery, you need to go around back." "It is not a delivery," I said. My voice was trembling, brittle and sharp. "Open the bag, just the main zipper, please." Something in my eyes must have communicated the terror I was feeling because the annoyance on his face vanished. He stood up slowly, his hand drifting instinctively toward the radio on his shoulder. He walked around the side door of the partition and approached the counter from his side. He reached for the zipper. "Gently," I breathed. He pulled the zipper down 3 inches. He leaned over, peering into the dark opening of the bag. He saw the gray t-shirt. He saw the gap I had left where the fabric was pushed aside. He saw the red light. Blink, blink. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifyingly professional. The color drained from his face so fast, it looked like the blood had been siphoned out of him. He did not gasp. He did not scream. He recoiled. He took 2 large, calculated steps backward, putting distance between his torso and the counter. "Code black in the lobby," he said into his radio. His voice was level, but there was a hard edge to it that cut through the air. "I have a confirmed device. Repeat, confirmed device. Initiate immediate lockdown. Clear the front room, now." Then he looked at me. His eyes were wide, but his gaze was steady. "Ma'am, back away from the counter. Walk toward the exit doors. Do not run. Just walk, now." The next 3 minutes were a blur of shouting and slamming doors. 2 other deputies burst from the back, weapons drawn but pointed at the floor. They ushered me not out the front door, but through a side corridor, deeper into the building. I was shoved into an interview room with concrete walls and a heavy steel door. "Stay here," one of them barked. "Do not come out." The door slammed shut, and I heard the heavy clank of a deadbolt sliding home. I was alone. I sat on the metal chair, wrapping my arms around myself. I was shivering violently. The adrenaline that had kept me driving was crashing, leaving me hollow and nauseous. I could hear muffled shouts outside, the sound of heavy boots running, and then a strange, oppressive silence settling over the building. I did not know how long I sat there. 10 minutes? 30? Time seemed to stretch and warp. Eventually, the lock clicked, the door opened. A woman walked in. She was not in a uniform. She wore a sharp charcoal blazer over a white blouse, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun. She carried a notepad and a rolling energy that immediately commanded the room. She pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down. She did not smile. She studied me for a long moment, her dark eyes scanning my face, my trembling hands, the sweat drying on my forehead. "I am Detective Marisol Vega," she said. Her voice was calm, the kind of calm that comes from seeing everything the world has to throw at you. "The bomb squad has secured the package. They are using a containment vessel to transport it to a safe range for detonation or deconstruction. The station is safe." I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Was it real? Vega leaned forward slightly. "It is a complex, improvised explosive device. It has a mercury switch and a timer. If you had hit a pothole too hard, or if that timer had hit 0, we would not be having this conversation." She let the weight of that hang in the air between us. "You did the right thing coming here, Samantha," she said. She used my name like she had known me for years. "But you need to understand something. You probably just escaped death by a margin of millimeters." I looked down at the metal table. "My parents packed it." "I know," Vega said. "You told the desk sergeant. Now, I need you to walk me through this. Every detail. Do not leave anything out." I told her everything. The call at 8 in the morning, Mom's tears, the story about Evan's accident in Prescott, the backpack being left on the porch, the strange heaviness, the gas station. Vega took notes in shorthand, her pen moving rapidly across the paper. When I finished, she tapped the end of her pen against the pad. "Who knew you were driving?" she asked. The question was simple, but it felt like an accusation. "What do you mean?" "Who knew you were taking your car?" Vega clarified. "Who knew you would be on that specific highway, at that specific time?" "My mom," I said. "She told me to drive. She told me not to fly because it would be faster to drive straight to Prescott." "Anyone else?" "My dad, I assume, and the neighbor, Linda, who dropped the bag off." Vega narrowed her eyes. "Did you tell anyone else you were leaving? A boyfriend? A coworker?" "No," I shook my head. "I just grabbed my keys and left. I did not even call into work yet." Vega nodded slowly. She stood up and walked to the one-way mirror on the wall, turning her back to me for a second. "So," she said, facing the glass, "the only people who knew the route and the timeline were your parents, and they provided the package." "They wouldn't," I whispered, the denial tasting like ash in my mouth. "They are my parents. They are in debt. Sure, they are stressed, but they love us." Vega turned back to me. Her expression was not pitying. It was clinically sharp. "We checked your vehicle, Samantha." My heart skipped a beat. "My car?" "Standard procedure when a device is found inside a vehicle," Vega said. "We sweep the perimeter. My guys looked underneath your SUV while the bomb squad was dealing with the backpack." She paused, watching my reaction. "There is residue on your undercarriage," she said, "and scratches near the fuel line. It looks like someone tried to attach something there recently. Or maybe they did attach something and it fell off. Or maybe—" She let the sentence trail off, but I finished it in my head. Or maybe the backpack was Plan B. You think they tried to kill me twice? I asked, my voice barely audible. I think someone wanted to make absolutely sure that car did not reach its destination intact, Vega said. And I think they wanted it to look like a tragedy, a fuel leak, an explosion on a hot highway, no witnesses. I felt sick. The room seemed to be spinning. But why? I pleaded. Evan is hurt. They are at the hospital. They are worried sick. Vega sat down again. She clasped her hands on the table. About that, she said. We have been trying to verify the accident. We called the highway patrol in Prescott. We called the local hospitals. She looked me dead in the eye. There is no record of an Evan Rourke being admitted anywhere in Arizona today. There is no record of a major accident involving his vehicle. I stared at her. The words did not make sense. Mom had been crying. I heard the grief in her voice. It was visceral. It was real. That is impossible, I stammered. Mom said he was in surgery. She said it was critical. We checked the call logs, Vega continued, ignoring my protest. The call you received this morning came from a cell tower, but it did not come from a hospital waiting room. It came from a location 2 hours north of here, a remote area. She leaned in closer. I need you to prepare yourself, Samantha. I need you to listen to me very carefully. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with a terrifying clarity. I do not think your brother is in the hospital, Vega said softly. I do not think there was an accident. She paused, making sure I absorbed every syllable. The trap was not for him. The backpack was not for him. The tears were not for him. Vega's voice dropped to a whisper that chilled me to the bone. The target is you. The interrogation room felt smaller now, shrinking with every second of silence that passed between Detective Vega and me. She did not just tell me that my brother was missing from the hospital records. She decided to prove it. She wanted to dismantle my denial brick by brick until I had nowhere left to hide. Vega pulled a heavy black desk phone toward her and hit the speaker button. She dialed a number she had written on her notepad. The ringtone was loud and harsh in the concrete room. Yavapai Regional Medical Center. This is admissions, a chirpy female voice answered. This is Detective Vega from Mojave County. I am following up on a previous inquiry regarding a trauma patient named Evan Rourke, Rourke, age 24, male. One moment, Detective. The hold music was a tinny, distorted classical piece that grated on my nerves. I stared at the phone, willing the woman to come back and say she had found him. I was praying for a clerical error. I was praying for a misspelling. I was praying that my parents were just incompetent communicators, not monsters. Detective, the voice returned. I have double-checked the trauma logs, the ER intake, and the general admission registry for the last 48 hours. We have no patient by that name. Thank you, Vega said, her eyes never leaving my face. And you have no John Does matching his description? We have one John Doe, but he is in his 60s, ma'am. Thank you. Vega disconnected the call. She did not speak. She dialed the next number, Northern Arizona VA, then the next, Dignity Health. The result was the same every time. No Evan Rourke, no car accident on Highway 89, no ambulance dispatch records matching the time my mother said he crashed. Stop it, I snapped, my voice cracking. Just stop it. You are calling the wrong places. Maybe they took him to Phoenix. Maybe he was airlifted. If he was airlifted, there would be a flight record, Vega said calmly. There is none. Call my mother, I demanded. I reached into my pocket, my hand shaking so badly I could barely unlock my screen. I will call her. She will explain this. She is just confused. She is hysterical because her son is hurt. I dialed Mom. It rang once, then clicked over. Hi, you've reached Elaine. Leave a message. I hung up and dialed again, voicemail. I dialed Dad. It rang 4 times, echoing in the emptiness of the room, before going to his gruff greeting. I dialed Evan, straight to voicemail. I sat there, holding the phone like a lifeline that had been cut. The silence from my family was deafening. It was not just that they were not answering. It felt like they had vanished, or worse, like they were watching me from a distance, waiting for the explosion that never happened. Vega opened a folder on the table. She slid a single sheet of paper toward me. It was a map of Arizona, printed in black and white, with jagged lines and circles drawn in red marker. "This is a triangulation of the cell tower data from the call you received this morning," Vega said. Her tone was clinical, stripping away the emotion to leave only the jagged edges of the truth. "Your mother called you at 8 in the morning. She claimed she was at the hospital in Prescott, waiting for your brother to get out of surgery." She tapped a spot on the map marked with a red X. "This is the hospital in Prescott." Then she slid her finger to a different location, nearly 40 miles away. It was a circle drawn in the middle of a vast, empty stretch of desert terrain. "And this," Vega said, "is where her phone pinged when she made that call." I stared at the circle. It was nowhere near a hospital. It was nowhere near a town. It was deep in the boondocks, near an old mining road that locals only used for illegal dumping or shooting practice. "She was not at the hospital," I whispered. "No," Vega said. "She was out in the middle of nowhere. And do you know what is interesting about that location? It overlooks the main highway, the highway you were driving on." The room seemed to tilt. A memory flashed in my mind, sharp and vivid. 2 weeks ago. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. We were in the kitchen. Mom was washing dishes, her back to me. "If you ever have to go to Arizona for work, Sam, which way do you go?" she had asked casually. "I usually take the 93, I had replied. "Is that safe?" she had pressed, turning to look at me with eyes that seemed full of maternal concern. "I heard there is construction. Maybe you should stick to the old route. It is faster if you hit it early in the morning. And don't fly. Honey, you know how the airports are these days. You have that nice big SUV. You should drive. It gives you more control." I had thought she was being a mother. I thought she was worrying about TSA lines and traffic jams. But she wasn't. She was scouting. She was not asking about my route to ensure my safety. She was asking to ensure my location. She needed to know exactly where I would be so she could calculate the timeline. She needed me in the car, alone, on a long stretch of road where a sudden explosion would look like a tragic mechanical failure. "She told me to drive," I said, my voice sounding hollow, like it belonged to someone else. "She specifically told me not to fly." "Because you cannot bring a bomb on a plane," Vega said. "And because if you fly, you are not the one behind the wheel when the accident happens." I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from sliding off the chair. I had walked right into it. I had let them guide me like a lamb to the slaughter. And the worst part was not the fear of death. It was the humiliation. I felt stupid. I felt incredibly, painfully stupid. I had rushed out of my house without brushing my teeth because I thought my brother was dying. I had driven 80 miles an hour because I wanted to hold his hand. I had trusted the panic in my mother's voice because I loved them. I loved my family. And they had used that love as a weapon. They had weaponized my loyalty. "Sam," Vega said, her voice softer now. "Look at me." I looked up. My vision was blurry with tears I refused to shed. "You cannot go home," she said. "Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time." "Why?" I asked. "They know I am not dead. By now. They must know." "Exactly," Vega said. "They know the device did not detonate. They know you did not crash. But they do not know why. They might think the timer malfunctioned. They might think you got a flat tire and are delayed. But the moment they realize you are alive and talking to police, you become a loose end." She leaned forward, her intensity radiating across the table. "People who are willing to blow up their own daughter to collect an insurance payout or cover a debt do not stop because Plan A failed. They panic, and panicked people are dangerous. They will try to finish the job." "So what do?" I asked. "Hide?" "Yes," Vega said firmly. "We are going to put you in a protective hold. We are cutting your communications, no social media, no texting friends. We are going to make you a ghost for the next 24 hours while we build a case that sticks. We need to find out exactly how deep this goes." I nodded, feeling a strange numbness spreading through my limbs. A ghost. That sounded nice. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to wake up in a world where my mother packed me lunches, not explosives. I feel so stupid, I whispered. I believed them. I grabbed that bag and ran because I thought I was saving Evan. Vega stood up and walked around the table. She placed a hand on my shoulder. It was a heavy, grounding weight. "Do not do that," she said sternly. "Do not blame the victim. You reacted like a human being who loves her family. They counted on that. That is not your weakness. Samantha, that is their crime." She walked to the door and signaled for the uniformed deputy outside. But before she opened it, she turned back to me one last time. "And there is one more thing you need to accept," she said. "What is that?" "You keep worrying about Evan. You keep asking where he is, if he is part of this, or if he is hurt." Vega's expression was grim, a mask of hard truths. "You need to consider the possibility that Evan was never in danger. He was never the victim in this story. He was just the bait." She opened the door, letting the noise of the bustling station filter in, but her next words were for me alone. "Maybe your brother is just the excuse. The real target is you." The silence in the interrogation room was different now. Before, it had been the silence of waiting. Now, it was the silence of a library where the books were made of human skin and the stories were written in blood. Detective Vega returned 20 minutes later, not with weapons or bomb disposal gear, but with a thick, beige accordion folder. She placed it on the steel table between us. The sound of the heavy paper hitting the metal was dull and final. "We have a forensic accountant on retainer for cases involving organized crime," Vega said, taking her seat. She did not look at me. She was busy organizing the stacks of paper she pulled from the folder. Usually, he tracks money laundering or cartel assets, but today, I asked him to run a rapid audit on Gordon and Elaine Rourke. She slid the first stack across the table. It was a printout of bank statements, highlighted aggressively in neon yellow and angry red. "Tell me about your parents' lifestyle. Sam," she said. "Country club memberships? New cars every 2 years? Maybe a vacation home in Lake Havasu?" "They live comfortably," I said, looking at the papers without really seeing them yet. "Dad retired early. Mom dabbles in real estate. They have a nice place in Henderson. Why does this matter?" "It matters," Vega said, her voice hard. "Because according to these records, your parents have been technically bankrupt for 11 months. I blinked, the words not computing. "What?" "Gordon's retirement fund is gone," Vega said, pointing to a column of zeros. "He liquidated the entire portfolio 2 years ago to invest in a tech startup based in Reno. The startup folded within 6 months. He lost everything, over $400,000. Gone." She flipped the page. "Elaine's real estate business? She hasn't sold a property in a year and a half, but she has taken out 3 separate lines of credit against the equity in their primary residence. They are leveraged to the hilt. They are currently 90 days past due on their second mortgage. The bank sent a foreclosure notice on Tuesday." I felt the blood drain from my face. "They never said anything. We had dinner on Sunday. Dad bought a vintage bottle of wine. It cost $300. "Of course he did," Vega said, her lip curling slightly. "Because for people like Gordon and Elaine, image is the only currency they have left. They are drowning. Sam, they are in a hole so deep they can't see the sky anymore. They need a miracle, or more accurately, they need a payout." She reached into the folder again and pulled out a document that looked official. It had a heavy blue border and a gold seal at the bottom. "Do you have life insurance, Sam?" "I have a standard policy through my job at Canyon Crest," I said. "Basic coverage, nothing huge, maybe 2 years' salary." "Not that one," Vega said. She spun the document around so I could read it. "This one." It was a policy from a private insurer I had never heard of. The coverage amount made my eyes bulge. $2 million, double indemnity for accidental death. "I never signed this," I whispered, reaching out to touch the paper. The date on the policy was from 3 months ago. "Look at the signature," Vega commanded. I looked. There, on the bottom line, was Samantha Rourke. It looked like my handwriting. The slant was right. The way the R looped was almost perfect, but the S was too tight. It was a trace, a careful, practiced forgery. And look at the beneficiary, Vega said. I scanned the document. Primary beneficiary, the Rourke Family Trust. Trustees, Gordon and Elaine Rourke. But wait, I said, my mind racing to find a logical flaw. This is just for me. What does this have to do with Evan? Why the fake story about him being hurt? Vega pulled out a third document. This one was thinner. An addendum attached to a policy that actually was in Evan's name. This is where it gets smart, Vega said, and there was a grudging respect in her tone that made me sick. They took out a policy on Evan, too, but because of Evan's age and his, let's call it instability in employment, the insurance company required a guarantor, a responsible party, a family member over the age of 30 to verify the medical history and serve as a secondary trustee. She pointed to a clause in the fine print. In the event of the guarantor's death, full administrative control of the policy and all associated assets reverts immediately to the primary legal guardians. If you are alive, Sam, you are the hurdle. Vega explained. You are the sensible sister who would ask questions if Evan's money started disappearing. You are the one who would check the accounts. But if you are dead... If I am dead, I finished, my voice trembling. They get the $2 million from my fake policy, and they get full control over whatever they plan to do with Evan. And the narrative, Vega added. Think about the story. Sam, devoted sister, dies in a tragic car accident while rushing to the bedside of her injured brother. It is perfect. It is heartbreaking. The insurance investigators would be crying while they wrote the check. It explains the speed. It explains the rote. It explains why you were distracted. It wraps the whole crime in a bow of grief. I sat back in the metal chair, feeling like I had been hollowed out with a spoon. I looked at the signatures again. My mother had probably practiced my signature at the kitchen table while drinking her morning coffee. My father had probably calculated the payout while watching football. They did not just want the money, I said, realizing the depth of the betrayal. They wanted a clean slate. They wanted to use my death to save their reputation. Greed is a powerful motivator, Vega said. But shame? Shame is what makes people into monsters. They were afraid of being poor. Sam, they were afraid of the neighbors finding out they were failures. And they decided your life was a fair price to pay to keep their country club membership. The door to the interrogation room opened again. A man in a blue jumpsuit walked in. He was holding a tablet and his hands were covered in grease. He looked at Vega and nodded. We finished the inspection on the SUV, he said. His voice was rough. You were right, Detective. Vega turned to me. Sam, this is Mike from our impound yard. Mike, tell her what you found. Mike looked at me with an expression of pity that I hated. He tapped his tablet and showed me a photo of the underside of my car. We found a magnetic box attached to your rear axle, Mike said. But that was not the main problem. Someone messed with your electronic power steering unit. He swiped to the next photo. A bundle of wires had been stripped and retaped. They installed a remote interrupter, Mike said. It is a nasty little piece of tech. Basically, if you are driving under 40 miles an hour, it does nothing. But if you hit highway speeds, say over 65, and someone triggers it, it locks the steering column. At that speed, on a curve, you would flip. You would roll 10 times before you stopped. I stared at the photo of the wires. The backpack, I whispered. The backpack was the guarantee, Vega said. Maybe the steering lock was plan A. Create a crash. Hope the car burns. But just in case you survive the crash, or in case the crash didn't happen, they gave you a bomb. They put a bomb in the passenger seat and told you it was your brother's underwear. It wasn't a threat, I said, the tears finally spilling over, hot and angry. It wasn't a scare tactic. They really wanted me dead. Today, by noon. They wanted a liquidation of assets, Vega corrected me coldly. You are not a daughter to them anymore. Sam, you are a portfolio. She signaled Mike to leave. the door clicked shut, leaving us alone with the evidence of my parents' trellis of lies. I looked at the map again. I looked at the forged insurance papers. I looked at the bank statements showing their desperation. It was all there. Mathematical proof that my parents loved their lifestyle more than they loved me. I felt something inside me break, but it wasn't a collapse. It was the snapping of a tether, the cord that bound me to them, the instinct to protect them, to make excuses for them. It snapped, and in its place, a cold, dark anger began to bloom. Vega watched me closely. She saw the change. She saw the moment the sadness turned into resolve. "We have enough for a conspiracy charge," Vega said. "But these people are slippery. They will lawyer up. They will claim they didn't know about the bomb, that someone else planted it. They will claim the signatures are real, without a confession, or without catching them in the act of trying to collect. It could be a long trial." She leaned across the table, her eyes locking onto mine. "Unless we give them exactly what they want?" I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "What do you mean?" "They are waiting for a phone call," Vega said. "They are waiting for the police to call and say, 'We found a wreck.' They are waiting to start their performance as the grieving parents." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "I can give them that call. Sam, we can stage the scene. We can put your car in a ditch. We can put you in a safe house." Vega's voice dropped, becoming a conspiratorial whisper. "The question is, are you strong enough to watch them mourn you? Are you ready to let them believe you are dead, just so we can watch them celebrate when they think no one is looking?" The decision to die is not a simple one, even when it is only on paper. I sat in that interrogation room, the air conditioning humming a low, monotonous note, and weighed the cost of Detective Vega's plan. If I agreed to this, if I agreed to become a ghost, I would be leaving Evan alone in that house with them. I would be leaving him with the people who had just tried to incinerate his sister for a payout. The thought made my stomach turn over. It felt like abandonment. "I cannot leave him," I said, my voice tight. "If they know I am gone, they might turn on him. If the insurance money does not come through fast enough, what is to stop them from trying to cash in on his policy next? You saw the papers. He is worth just as much dead as I am." Vega shook her head firmly. "They will not touch Evan. Not yet. He is their golden goose, but only if they play the grieving parents correctly. They need him to be the face of tragedy. If 2 children die in 1 week, that flags an immediate fraud investigation. They are greedy, Samantha, but they are not stupid. They need Evan alive to validate their suffering." She pulled a chair closer, invading my personal space in a way that felt necessary. "And listen to me," she continued. "We will have eyes on him. I am putting a patrol car on rotation 2 streets over. We are tapping the landline. We are getting a warrant for interior surveillance based on the bomb threat. I will know if they so much as raise a voice at him. But if you walk out of here right now, alive and angry, they will clam up. They will destroy the laptops. They will burn the financial records. And 3 months from now, when you let your guard down, they will try again. And next time, I might not be there to stop it." I looked at the map on the table. I looked at the black backpack sealed in an evidence bag. "Okay," I said. The word tasted like iron. "Let's kill Samantha Rourke." The next 3 hours were a masterclass in deception. Vega moved with terrifying efficiency. First, they took my phone. I had to unlock it and disable the tracking. Then Vega handed it to a tech who would drive it to a location near the fake crash site and smash it, ensuring the last signal ping matched the narrative. Then came the car. I had to sign a release form allowing them to tow my SUV to a staging area. Vega explained the setup. They would not wreck it violently. Too much risk of forensic mismatch. But they would run it off the road into a ravine near the spot where my mother's phone had pinged. They would smash the windows, deploy the airbags manually, and leave the door open. "We make it look like you crawled out," Vega explained. "Disoriented, injured, wandering into the desert, it keeps the case as a missing person initially, which gives us more legal room to maneuver than a confirmed fatality. It keeps your parents in a state of high anxiety. Anxiety makes people make mistakes." "And me?" I asked. Where do I go? You go to the Void, she said. The Void turned out to be a safe house in Bullhead City, about 40 minutes away. It was a nondescript beige apartment in a complex that housed mostly transient casino workers. It smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale cigarette smoke. Vega gave me a burner phone with only one number programmed into it. Hers. No internet, she ordered. No checking your email, no logging into your bank account, no checking Facebook to see who is posting about you. You are offline. Completely. She handed me a set of keys and a debit card with a generic name on it. There is $2,000 on this. Buy groceries. Buy clothes. Do not leave the apartment unless you have to, and stay away from the windows. That night, the silence of the apartment was suffocating. I sat on the cheap sofa, staring at the blank television screen. I was stripping away 33 years of life, my job, my friends, my routines, all gone. I was just a body in a room, waiting for my parents to act. The next morning, Vega returned. She carried a laptop, a heavy-duty model with encryption software running. We got the warrant, she said, setting it up on the coffee table. A judge signed off on it an hour ago, given the imminent threat to life and the evidence of the explosive device. We have tapped into the security system at your parents' house. My parents had installed a high-end security system years ago. Cameras in the driveway, the living room, and the kitchen. They had done it to protect their assets. Now, it was going to be their undoing. Vega typed in a password and the screen flickered to life. A grid of 4 images appeared. This is live, she said. My breath caught in my throat. There was my kitchen, the granite island where I had eaten breakfast 1,000 times, the expensive espresso machine, and there was my mother. Elaine Rourke was wearing a silk robe, pacing back and forth in front of the refrigerator. She held a phone to her ear. There was no audio feed from the cameras, only video, but Vega had synced the audio from the wiretap. I put on the headphones. I don't know. Gordon, she should have been there by now. It is a 4-hour drive. It has been 6 hours. Why hasn't the hospital called? Her voice was not worried. It was annoyed. It was the tone she used when a package delivery was late. I watched Gordon walk into the frame. He looked disheveled, holding a tumbler of scotch. It was 10 in the morning. Maybe she stopped, Gordon said. His voice was tinny through the surveillance mic. Maybe she turned back. She wouldn't turn back, Elaine snapped. She thinks Evan is dying. She is predictable. Gordon, she always does what she is told. Hearing those words, she is predictable, was like a slap in the face. I watched my mother pour herself a glass of water, her hand steady. There was no grief. There was only the tension of a gambler waiting for the roulette wheel to stop spinning. Where is Evan? I asked Vega, pulling one earphone off. I need to see him. Camera 3, Vega said, pointing to the bottom left quadrant. It was the living room. Evan was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked physically small, shrunken by fear. He was staring at his phone, then at the front door. He stood up and walked to the window, peering out through the blinds. Does he know? I asked. Does he know I am missing? Not yet, Vega said. We haven't released the report. Right now, he just thinks you are not answering your phone. He's probably worried you are mad at him, or that you are busy. He looks terrified, I said. He knows something is wrong. He knows they are acting strange. He is safe, Vega reminded me. Look at him. He is unharmed. He is just confused. We cannot tell him. Sam, if he knows you are alive, his face will show it. Your parents need to see genuine fear in his eyes to believe the lie. It is cruel, I whispered. It is torturing him. It is saving him, Vega corrected. And it is the only way to get the evidence we need to put them away for 20 years. We need them to talk about the money. We need them to admit the plan while they think they are safe in their own home. We watched for hours. It was the most painful binge watch of my life. I watched my parents eat lunch. I watched them ignore Evan when he asked questions. I watched Gordon check his tablet constantly, refreshing the news sites. looking for reports of a crash on Highway 93. Around 2 in the afternoon, Vega's phone buzzed. She looked at a text message and nodded. "It is time," she said. "Patrol found the car. We are releasing the statement to the press in 10 minutes. Police are investigating a suspicious single-vehicle accident involving a vehicle registered to a local Henderson woman. Driver is missing." I put the headphones back on, pressing them tight against my ears. I needed to see the moment it hit. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Suddenly, Gordon's phone rang on the kitchen counter. He snatched it up. I watched his face. He listened for a few seconds, then his eyes widened. He covered the mouthpiece and looked at Elaine. He nodded once, a sharp, definitive nod. Elaine did not scream. She did not collapse. She closed her eyes and let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging in what looked like relief. Relief. Gordon hung up the phone. He turned to Elaine. "They found the car," he said. "No body, just the wreck. They think she wandered off into the desert. They are starting a search." "No body?" Elaine asked, her brow furrowing. "But the device? Surely there isn't much left to find if—" Gordon shushed her aggressively, pointing at the ceiling, paranoid about unseen listeners, ironically missing the camera right above the fridge. "It is fine," he hissed. "Missing is good. Missing becomes declared dead after a period. We just have to play the part. We have to be devastated." I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, displacing the grief. They were discussing my death like a business transaction. Then the doorbell rang. I watched Elaine's posture change instantly. It was a physical transformation. She hunched her shoulders. She grabbed a tissue from the counter. She rubbed her eyes vigorously until they were red. She let out a jagged, practiced sob and leaned against the counter for support. Gordon walked to the door and opened it. It was Mrs. Gable from next door, holding a casserole dish. She must have seen the police cars earlier or heard the news. I watched through the hallway camera. Elaine rushed into the frame. She threw herself into Mrs. Gable's arms. Her body shook with heavy, heaving sobs.
"Oh, Linda," she wailed. "My Sam, my poor baby. They can't find her. I told her not to drive. I told her it was dangerous."
It was an Oscar-worthy performance. It was sickening. Mrs. Gable was patting her back, looking horrified and sympathetic, completely bought in. I watched them for 5 minutes. The tears, the shaking hands, the way Gordon stood stoically in the background, looking like the strong father holding it together. Then Mrs. Gable left. Gordon closed the door and locked it. I watched Elaine turn around. The transition was instant. The sobbing stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. She straightened her back. She wiped the fake tears from her cheeks with a quick, dismissive swipe of her hand. She looked at Gordon, her face completely dry, her eyes hard and calculating. "Okay," she said, her voice steady and devoid of any emotion. "That is the neighbors handled. Now, we need to call the insurance company. We need to ask if the policy covers missing persons or if we need a death certificate immediately. Get the paperwork. Gordon." I stared at the screen, my fingernails digging into my palms until they bled. "I am going to destroy them," I said to the empty room. Vega, standing behind me, placed a hand on the back of the sofa. "Yes," she said. "We are." The safe house had become my entire world. It was a purgatory with beige walls and drawn curtains, where time was measured not by the rising sun, but by the timestamp in the corner of the surveillance feed. For 3 days, I had been a spectator to the aftermath of my own disappearance. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by empty coffee cups, my eyes burning as I watched the 2 people who gave me life perform a masterclass in deception. It was grotesque theater. On the screen, captured by the camera mounted in the foyer, I watched the morning ritual of public grief. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock sharp. It was a group of women from the neighborhood church, carrying Tupperware containers and bouquets of white lilies. Elaine opened the door. Her hair was disheveled, artfully so. She wore no makeup, which for my mother was a statement of profound distress. As the women murmured their condolences, Elaine collapsed into the arms of the tallest visitor. Her shoulders shook. Her wails were muffled but audible through the sensitive microphone Vega's team had installed. "I just want her back," Elaine sobbed, her voice cracking perfectly. "I do not care about anything else. I just want my Sammy back." Behind her, Gordon stood with his head bowed, one hand resting on the doorframe as if he barely had the strength to stand. He accepted a handshake from one of the husbands, nodding slowly. "She was a good girl," Gordon said, his voice thick with emotion. "The best daughter a man could ask for. We are praying for a miracle." It was seamless. If I had been a neighbor, I would have wept with them. I would have gone home and told my family that the Rourkes were broken people. But I was not a neighbor. I was the ghost in the machine, and I knew what happened when the door closed. The moment the guests left, the performance evaporated. I watched Elaine lock the deadbolt. She turned around and leaned her back against the door. But she did not slide down in despair. She checked her watch. She walked into the kitchen, her stride purposeful and energetic. She opened the fridge and took out a bottle of sparkling water. "That woman talks too much," Elaine said, her voice completely devoid of the tremor she had used seconds ago. "Did you see her looking at the carpet? She was checking if we had cleaned." Gordon walked into the frame. He picked up one of the condolence cards from the counter, glanced at it, and tossed it into the trash without opening it. "Focus, Elaine," he said. He sounded irritable, not grieving. "Did you call the adjuster back?" "I am handling it," Elaine snapped, taking a sip of water. "I told him we are too distraught to speak, but I sent the email asking for the claim forms. I framed it as preparing for the worst. It sounds better than asking for the check." I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They were not just killing me, they were managing my death like a project. But while my parents managed the optics, my brother was dying by inches. I switched the feed to the external camera covering the driveway. Evan was there. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same clothes he had on yesterday. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out by sleeplessness. He was loading a stack of papers into his beat-up sedan. I zoomed in. They were flyers. Missing. Samantha Rourke. Last seen driving a black SUV. Please help. My heart twisted. Evan wasn't part of the play. He was living the nightmare for real. I watched him fumble with his keys, dropping them on the pavement because his hands were shaking so hard. He picked them up and got into the car. Heading out to drive the highway route again, he was looking for skid marks. He was looking for his sister. Inside the house, Gordon watched Evan leave through the window. "He is wasting gas," Gordon muttered. "Let him go," Elaine said, scrolling through something on her tablet. "It looks good. The grieving brother searching for his sister. It adds credibility to the narrative. If the police see him searching, they won't suspect us." "He is going to crack," Gordon warned. "He is not sleeping. If he talks to the police and says something stupid—" "He won't," Elaine said dismissively. "He is scared. Fear makes him obedient." She tapped her screen, her face illuminated by the blue light. I watched her fingers move, typing rapidly. "What are you doing?" Gordon asked. "I am looking up the statute on declaration of death in absentia," she replied. "If they do not find a body, and they won't, because there is no body to find in that ravine, we need to know how long we have to wait before the insurance pays out. Usually, it is 7 years. 7 years? Gordon's voice rose an octave. We do not have 7 years. Elaine, we have 7 weeks before the bank takes this house. Keep your voice down, Elaine hissed. There are exceptions. Imminent peril. If we can prove she was in a situation where death was the only likely outcome, like a car crash in dangerous terrain, we can petition the court to declare her dead sooner. Maybe 6 months. 6 months is too long. Gordon paced the kitchen, running a hand through his thinning hair. I talked to the guy at the firm today. He said if we can put down a deposit by the end of the month, we can stall the foreclosure. We need cash flow now. Well, maybe you shouldn't have blown the retirement fund on crypto and bad stocks, Elaine shot back. And maybe you shouldn't have bought a third investment property we couldn't afford, Gordon shouted. I sat in the safe house, stunned. They were arguing. They were fighting. But they were not fighting about the fact that they had tried to murder their daughter. They were not fighting about the morality of what they had done. They were fighting about cash flow. They were fighting about the timeline of the payout. My life, my entire existence, was just a line item on a balance sheet that was in the red. I wasn't a person to them. I was an asset to be liquidated to cover their bad investments. I looked at Evan's empty spot in the driveway on one screen, and my parents bickering over money on the other. The contrast broke something inside me, but it also clarified everything. For days, a small, stupid part of me had hoped for remorse. I had hoped to see my mother crying alone in the bathroom. I had hoped to see my father staring at my baby pictures. I wanted to believe that they had been forced into this, that they were desperate people making a tragic mistake. But there was no remorse. There was only calculation. They do not love me, I said out loud. The words hung in the quiet apartment, heavy and absolute. They never loved me. They just loved what I could provide. The door to the safe house opened. Detective Vega walked in. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright with adrenaline. She dropped a file on the coffee table next to my laptop. You need to see this, she said. What is it? Phone records from this afternoon, Vega said. Your mother. She called the insurance agent again. The call lasted 20 minutes. I saw her on the video, I said. She said she was asking for forms. She did more than that, Vega said. We got a statement from the agent. Elaine was pushing. She asked specifically if the accidental death double indemnity clause applies if the body is not recovered immediately. She tried to make it sound like a hypothetical question, but the agent got spooked. He said she sounded eager. She wants to close the deal, I said, looking at the woman on the screen who was now calmly cutting vegetables for a dinner I would never eat. She is tired of waiting. We are close, Vega said. But we are not there yet. Suspicion isn't proof. We need them to commit. We need them to sign a sworn affidavit claiming you are dead so they can collect the money. Once they sign that paper knowing you might be alive, it is fraud. Once they accept the check, it is theft. And combined with the bomb evidence, it is life in prison. But they are stalling, I said. They are scared of the 7-year rule. They are going to try to wait it out. Not if we force their hand, Vega said. I looked at the screen. Evan had just returned. He walked into the kitchen, dusty and exhausted. He poured a glass of water and drank it at the sink. Gordon walked up to him and put a hand on his shoulder. It looked like a comforting gesture. But then I saw Gordon lean in and say something. Evan flinched. He shrank away. Gordon squeezed harder. I could guess what he was saying. Stop looking. She is gone. Let it go. I am done waiting, I told Vega. I am done watching them torture him. I want to end this. I do not want violence, Sam, Vega warned. If you go there, if you confront them with a gun, you lose. You become the criminal. I do not want to shoot them, I said, my voice cold and steady. I want to destroy them. I want to strip them of the one thing they care about more than me. I want to take their reputation. I want them to walk into a room thinking they have won, and I want to watch the floor drop out from under them. Vega nodded slowly. She liked that answer. To do that, Vega said, we need to make them feel safe. We need them to believe the police have given up. We need them to think the accident is the official story. She walked over to the window, looking out at the desert twilight. We need a catalyst, she said. A little nudge. Something that makes them think the coast is clear to file that claim. I looked at the screen one last time. Elaine was serving dinner. The perfect hostess. The perfect mother. I know what to do, I said. They are superstitious. They are paranoid. If we push the right button, they will panic. And when they panic, they will run for the money. Vega turned back to me, a small, sharp smile playing on her lips. We need a nudge, she repeated, something to make them think the plan worked perfectly. Psychological warfare is a delicate art. It requires precision. You cannot just scream at your enemy. You have to whisper something that makes them scream at themselves. Detective Vega called it poking the bear. I called it haunting them. We were sitting in the safe house on a Tuesday afternoon. The desert sun was beating against the blackout curtains. But inside, the glow of the monitors provided the only light. On the screen, the mail carrier was walking up the driveway of my parents' house. He carried a small, padded yellow envelope. It looked innocent. It looked like a bill, or a sample of detergent, or a birthday card. But inside that envelope was a photograph. It was a picture taken 20 years ago at a campsite near Sedona. In the photo, I was 13. Evan was 4. I was holding him on my shoulders, both of us laughing, while my parents stood in the background, grilling burgers. It was the picture of the perfect American family. But on the back of the photo, in handwriting that Vega had carefully matched to look like a child's scrawl, was a single phrase: "Ready or not, here I come." It was the game we used to play, hide and seek. It was what I used to yell before I went hunting for Evan in the backyard. It was a phrase that belonged to a dead girl. I watched Elaine walk to the mailbox. She was wearing sunglasses, scanning the street. Her paranoia had been ramping up over the last 48 hours. She grabbed the mail and walked back inside, sorting through the envelopes as she entered the kitchen. She stopped. She held the yellow envelope. It had no return address. I leaned forward, my nose almost touching the monitor. "Open it," I whispered. She tore the tab. She slid the photo out. I saw the moment recognition hit her. Her body went rigid. She stared at the image of her children, the daughter she tried to kill and the son she was gaslighting. Then she flipped it over. Elaine Rourke did not scream. She dropped the photo as if it were coated in acid. It fluttered to the tiled floor, landing face down. She backed away until her hips hit the granite island. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Gordon!" she hissed. It was a strangled sound. "Gordon, get down here." My father stumbled into the frame. He was holding a coffee mug, but I knew from the way he swayed that it wasn't coffee inside. He had been drinking steadily since the police announced they found my wrecked car. "What?" he grunted. "What is it?" "Look," Elaine pointed a shaking finger at the floor. "Look at that." Gordon bent down, groaning slightly, and picked up the photo. He squinted at it. Then he read the back. His reaction was different. He didn't look scared. He looked sick. His face, already flushed from the alcohol, turned a blotchy, violent shade of purple. "Who sent this?" he demanded, looking around the empty kitchen as if the sender were hiding in the pantry. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "Nobody knows that phrase," Elaine whispered, her voice trembling. "Nobody but us. Sam used to say it. Sam used to say it every time they played." "Sam is dead," Gordon snapped, though his voice lacked conviction. "She is dead. Elaine, we saw the news. The car was destroyed." "Then who sent it?" Elaine's voice rose to a shriek. "Is she alive? Did she survive? If she is alive, Gordon, she knows. She knows what was in the bag." "She is not alive!" Gordon slammed his hand on the counter. "The police said the crash was catastrophic. Maybe Evan sent it? Maybe he found it in an old album and is trying to make us feel guilty." "Evan is at the printers picking up more flyers," Elaine said, pacing rapidly in a tight circle. "It wasn't him. Someone knows. Gordon, someone is watching us." She went to the back door and checked the lock. Then she checked the window latches. She closed the blinds, plunging the kitchen into semi-darkness. It was the behavior of a trapped animal. "We went too far," Gordon muttered, taking a long pull from his mug. "I told you the backpack was too much. We should have just stuck with the steering tamper. The backpack. That is a federal offense. Elaine." "Shut up," she hissed. "Do not say that word." I watched them unravel. It was satisfying, but it was also deeply disturbing. They weren't mourning me. They were mourning their own safety. They were terrified of getting caught, not of losing their daughter. But the real damage happened 10 minutes later, when the front door opened. Evan walked in. He was holding a stack of fresh missing person flyers. He looked exhausted. His shoulders slumped. He walked toward the kitchen to get a glass of water, but he stopped in the hallway. Gordon and Elaine were still arguing in hushed, frantic tones. They didn't hear him come in. "We just need the money to clear," Gordon was saying. His voice slurred. "Once the funds are wired, we can leave. We can go to Mexico for a while. Let the heat die down." "We cannot leave until the claim is processed," Elaine argued. "If we run now, it looks suspicious. We have to play the part, Gordon. We have to be the grieving parents." Evan stood frozen in the hallway. The camera angle was perfect. I could see his face clearly. Confusion morphed into shock, and then into a dawning, horrific realization. He looked at the flyers in his hand, my face staring back at him, and then he looked at the kitchen where his parents were discussing their escape plan. He backed away silently. He retreated to his room and closed the door. "He heard them," Vega said. She was standing behind me, arms crossed. "He knows." "He doesn't want to believe it," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "He is trying to rationalize it. He thinks maybe they are just stressed about debt." But Evan wasn't rationalizing. 10 minutes later, I watched him on the bedroom camera. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, his phone in his hand. He wasn't calling his friends. He wasn't scrolling social media. He was staring at a business card. It was the card Detective Vega had given him on the first day, the one that said, "If you remember anything, call me." He dialed. In the safe house, Vega's burner phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up and put it on speaker. "Detective Vega," she answered, her voice professional. "Detective," Evan's voice was barely a whisper. He sounded like a child. "It is Evan. Evan Rourke." "Hello, Evan. Is everything okay?" I do not know," he stammered. "My parents, they are acting weird. I just heard them talking. My dad, he said something about money clearing and going to Mexico." He paused, and I could hear his breathing hitch. "And a package came today. My mom got really scared. I found the photo in the trash can. It is just an old picture of me and Sam. I do not understand why they are so afraid." "Evan," Vega said softly, "you are doing the right thing by telling me. I need you to just keep your eyes open. Do not confront them. Do not let them know you are suspicious. Can you do that?" "Did they hurt her?" Evan asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and terrible. "Detective, did my parents do something to Sam?" I closed my eyes. Hearing him ask that was worse than finding the bomb. It was the sound of his world shattering. "We are investigating every lead, Evan," Vega said, dodging the question to protect the operation. "Just stay safe. I will be in touch." She hung up. "He is in danger," I said, opening my eyes. "If they find out he called you, if they think he is turning on them—" "They won't find out," Vega said. "But we need to accelerate. Gordon is cracking. Elaine is getting paranoid. We need to give them an exit. People like them, when they feel the walls closing in, they lunge for the door. We need to show them a door that leads straight to a jail cell." That afternoon, Vega put the final piece of the trap in place. She had her contact at the insurance company call Elaine. I listened to the recording later. The agent told Elaine that due to the high-profile nature of the case and the clear evidence of a vehicle tragedy, the company was willing to expedite the review process. He suggested an in-person meeting in Phoenix on Friday to finalize the beneficiary confirmation and discuss the expedited payout options. It was the carrot they had been starving for. I watched the reaction on the monitors. When Elaine got off the phone, she didn't cry. She didn't mourn. She did a little fist pump, a literal fist pump. "Friday," she told Gordon, shaking his shoulder to wake him from a drunken doze on the sofa. "We go to Phoenix on Friday. They are ready to pay. They just need us to sign the final affidavits." "$2 million?" Gordon asked, sitting up, his eyes suddenly sharp. "Plus the rider on Evan's policy if we can leverage the administrative control," Elaine said. "We are going to be rich. Gordon, we are going to be free." Gordon stood up, He walked to the window and looked out at the street. He looked confident again. The alcohol seemed to evaporate, replaced by the intoxication of greed. "I need to make a call," he said. He walked out to the patio. I switched cameras. He dialed a number. "Yeah, it is Gordon," he said into the phone. "Listen, regarding that bridge loan we talked about, I want to structure the repayment. I have a large liquidity event happening this weekend. Yes, 7 figures. I want to clear the ledger by Monday." He was spending my life insurance money before my body was even cold. He was negotiating with a loan shark using my death as collateral. Inside the house, the atmosphere had shifted from funeral solemnity to manic energy. Elaine was cleaning the kitchen, humming to herself. She was packing a bag for the trip to Phoenix. She was choosing her outfit. Black, of course, but expensive black, the kind of black you wear to look rich and sad. But Evan was the variable they had forgotten to calculate. It was 8 in the evening. I watched Evan walk down the hallway. He stopped outside the kitchen door. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Elaine and Gordon were toasting with glasses of wine. They thought they were alone. They thought Evan was in his room, sedated by grief. "To Samantha," Gordon said, raising his glass. There was no sorrow in his voice, only a dark, cynical humor. "She always wanted to help the family. Well, she finally did." Elaine clinked her glass against his. "She was a good investment, in the end." I saw Evan's hand grip the doorframe. His knuckles were white. He was trembling. Then Elaine said the words that would seal her fate. "Stop worrying about the boy. Gordon," she said, taking a sip of the expensive red wine. "He doesn't know anything, and even if he suspects, what is he going to do? He is weak. He needs us." She smiled, a cold, reptilian smile that chilled me to the bone, even through the grainy video feed. "As long as the money comes on Friday, everything will be fine. We just sign the papers, cry a little bit for the cameras, and then we move on." And right at that moment, Evan stepped into the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't scream. He just stood there, looking at them. Elaine froze mid-sip. Gordon turned around, the smile dropping from his face. For a second, nobody moved. The silence was absolute. Then Evan looked at his mother, really looked at her, stripping away 24 years of maternal illusion, and he turned around. He walked away. He didn't run. He just walked out the front door and into the night. "Let him go," Gordon started to say, but Elaine stood up, panic flashing in her eyes. "No," she said. "If he leaves now, if he talks to anyone—" "He won't," Gordon said. But I knew better, and looking at the screen, I knew the game of cat and mouse was over. "Get the car ready," I told Vega, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "They are going to Phoenix to collect their money, and I am going to be there to welcome them to hell." The conference room on the 24th floor of the insurance building in downtown Phoenix was a fortress of glass and polished mahogany. It offered a panoramic view of the sprawling desert city, a landscape of beige and burnt orange baking under the relentless sun. Inside, the air was chilled to a precise, sterile 68 degrees. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, preserving everything in a state of suspended animation. I stood in the adjacent room, watching the feed on a tablet screen. Detective Vega stood beside me, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. We were watching the final act of a tragedy, but the players on the stage did not know the curtain was about to fall. Elaine and Gordon Rourke walked into the conference room. They were dressed for the role of a lifetime. My mother wore a black dress that was tasteful, expensive, and modest. It was the uniform of the grieving matriarch. She wore no jewelry, save for her wedding band. My father wore a dark charcoal suit that hung slightly loose on his frame, suggesting a man who had lost his appetite from sorrow. He clutched a leather portfolio as if it contained holy scripture, rather than the forged documents of his daughter's life. They sat down opposite 2 men. To them, these men were senior claims adjusters and corporate counsel for the insurance firm. In reality, the man on the left was a senior fraud investigator named Sterling, and the man on the right was a forensic auditor from the district attorney's office. Mr. and Mrs. Rourke, Sterling said, his voice smooth and practiced. He pushed a crystal pitcher of water toward them. Thank you for coming in. I know this is an incredibly difficult time. We want to make this process as painless as possible. We just want to bring our daughter home, Elaine said. Her voice was soft, trembling just enough to be convincing. Or, at least, bring closure to this nightmare. The uncertainty. It is killing us. Gordon nodded solemnly, staring at the polished wood of the table. We appreciate you expediting the review, with the police declaring it a probable fatality. We just need to settle her affairs. It is what Samantha would have wanted. She was always so organized. I watched from the other room, feeling a phantom ache in my chest. She was always so organized. He used my virtue, the trait I was most proud of, to justify erasing me. We have reviewed the preliminary police report, the auditor said, opening a thin laptop. It indicates a single-car accident on a remote stretch of Highway 93. No witnesses, no body recovered yet. The terrain is very difficult, Elaine interjected quickly. The detective said the ravine is full of coyotes and, well, natural hazards. They said it might take weeks to find remains. She choked on the word remains, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. It was perfect. It was sickening. We understand, Sterling said. However, because the policy is for $2 million with a double indemnity clause for accidental death, we have to follow a strict due diligence protocol. It is just paperwork, I assure you. Standard questions. Ask whatever you need, Gordon said, loosening his tie slightly. He was sweating. I could see the sheen on his forehead even through the camera feed. Let us start with the timeline, Sterling said, glancing at a sheet of paper. You stated that you called Samantha at roughly 8 in the morning on Saturday. Yes, Elaine said. I called her to tell her about Evan, about his accident. And you were at the hospital in Prescott at that time? Yes, Elaine said firmly. We were in the waiting room. Which hospital was that again? The auditor asked, his pen poised over a notepad. Elaine didn't blink. Yavapai Regional. I told the police this. Right, the auditor said. He didn't write anything down. He just looked at her. It is strange. Mrs. Rourke, we ran a standard location verification on your cell phone carrier data. Standard procedure for claims over $1 million. Your phone pinged a tower near Wickiup at 8 in the morning. That is about 40 miles west of the hospital. It is actually quite close to the crash site. The silence in the room lasted for 3 seconds. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Elaine recovered first. Reception in the desert is terrible. The signals bounce off the mountains. I am sure the data is just inaccurate. We were at the hospital. I was hysterical. Maybe I walked outside to get air. I do not remember the exact geography. I was worried about my son. Of course, Sterling said, moving on smoothly. And the route? You advised Samantha to drive? I told her it was faster, Elaine said. I told her to hurry. Did she have anything in the car with her? Sterling asked. Anything valuable? Large amounts of cash? Expensive equipment? Anything that might suggest a motive for foul play by a third party? No, Gordon blurted out. Just her purse and a bag. Sterling's eyes snapped to Gordon. A bag? A backpack, Gordon clarified, his voice climbing a little higher. My wife packed some clothes for Evan. She asked Sam to bring it. Just clothes, socks, underwear, nothing valuable. Just clothes, Sterling repeated. It is interesting you mention that, because the blast analysis, based on the burn patterns on the vehicle wreckage, suggests the fire started inside the passenger cabin, not in the engine block. Gordon froze, his hand, resting on the table, twitched violently. He looked at Elaine. Elaine's eyes narrowed. She leaned forward, shedding the grieving mother persona like a snake shedding skin. She became the shark I knew she was. What are you implying? She asked, her voice turning sharp. Are you saying my daughter set her own car on fire? Or are you trying to find a loophole to avoid paying the claim? Because if you are, I will have my lawyer in here within the hour. We are victims here. We are not implying anything, Mrs. Rourke, Sterling said calmly. We are establishing facts, and another fact that confuses us is the financial situation. He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table. This is a credit report for the Rourke Family Trust, the auditor said. It shows 3 liens on your primary residence. It shows a defaulted business loan. It shows that you are, for all intents and purposes, insolvent. That is private information, Gordon shouted, standing up halfway before sitting back down. That has nothing to do with my daughter's death. It speaks to motive, the auditor said. In cases where a beneficiary stands to gain a significant windfall during a period of extreme financial distress, we have to look closer. We loved our daughter. Elaine slammed her hand on the table. The water in the pitcher rippled. How dare you? We are grieving parents. We have lost everything. We are here to finalize a policy that we paid premiums on for years. We have rights. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. She looked at Gordon, silently commanding him to back her up, but Gordon looked like he was about to vomit. We just want the check, Elaine hissed, dropping all pretense of politeness. We need to pay for her funeral. We need to pay for Evan's medical bills. Just cut the check. You have the police report. She is gone. She is not coming back. Stop torturing us. We need to pay the debts, Gordon muttered, almost to himself. Before Monday, we need to pay the debts. Gordon, shut up, Elaine snapped at him. Then she turned back to Sterling, her eyes cold and hard. My daughter is dead. I am the beneficiary. The paperwork is in order. If you do not process this claim today, I will sue this company for bad faith and emotional distress. I will drag your names through the mud. Do you understand me? She was magnificent in her awfulness. She was a cornered predator, baring her teeth, using her own daughter's memory as a bludgeon to get what she wanted. She looked at them with absolute conviction, daring them to call her a liar. She is dead, Elaine repeated, measuring every word. And nothing you say can change that. Sterling looked down at his papers. He closed the folder. He looked up at the glass partition on the far wall. You are right, Mrs. Rourke, Sterling said softly. We cannot change the past, but we can clarify the present. He looked at the door. I think we have heard enough regarding the claim, Sterling said. But there is one more witness we need to consult before we authorize the transfer. Witness? Elaine scoffed. There were no witnesses. The road was empty. Not entirely, Sterling said. On the other side of the wall, Detective Vega tapped her earpiece. She looked at me. Her expression was grim but encouraging. You are up, Sam, she said. Go bury them. I took a deep breath. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. I felt a strange, icy calm. I reached for the door handle. Inside the conference room, Elaine was gathering her purse, looking triumphant. She thought she had bullied them into submission. She thought the check was being printed. Who is this witness? Gordon asked nervously, looking at the door. Someone who knows exactly what was in the backpack, Sterling said. The heavy oak door swung open. I stepped into the room. The air conditioning seemed to stop humming. The traffic noise from the city below vanished. The world narrowed down to the 4 people at that table. I was wearing simple jeans and a gray t-shirt, the same t-shirt I was wearing the day I drove to the gas station, the day I died. I did not look at the investigators. I looked straight at the 2 people sitting with their backs to the window. Gordon turned first. He made a sound that was not human. It was a wheezing, strangulated gasp, like a man who had been punched in the throat. He scrambled backward, his chair screeching against the floor, knocking over the pitcher of water. The glass shattered, but no one looked at it. Ghost, he stammered, his face draining of blood until he looked like wax. Elaine, look! Elaine was freezing in slow motion. She turned her head, annoyed at Gordon's clumsiness, and then her eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, she did not comprehend. Her brain refused to process the image. She blinked. Once, twice, expecting the hallucination to fade. I took a step forward. I stood at the end of the long table. "Hello, Mother," I said. My voice was steady. It did not sound like a daughter greeting a parent. It sounded like a judge reading a verdict. Elaine's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her fingernails turned white. Her eyes darted from me to the investigators, then back to me. "No," she whispered. "No, you are dead. The car. The ravine." "I didn't go to the ravine," I said. "I went to the police station. I showed them the gift you packed for me." Elaine's face crumbled. The mask of the grieving mother, the mask of the savvy businesswoman, the mask of the victim. It all fell away. Beneath it, there was only naked terror. "Sam!" Gordon whimpered, holding his hands up as if to ward off a blow. "Sammy, listen, it is a misunderstanding. We can explain. It wasn't what it looked like." "It was exactly what it looked like," I said. "It was a bomb. It was a mercury switch. It was $2 million. I looked at my mother. I wanted to see if there was any love left in her eyes, any relief that her child was alive. There was none. There was only the calculation of a gambler who realizes the house has rigged the deck. She looked at me with pure hatred. "You ungrateful little..." Elaine started to snarl, her instinct to attack kicking in even as her world collapsed. But before she could finish, the side door opened again. Detective Vega walked in, followed by 4 uniformed officers. "Gordon Rourke, Elaine Rourke," Vega announced, her voice filling the room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and the attempted use of an explosive device." The officers moved in. The click of handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. I stood there and watched them being pulled from their chairs. I watched Gordon crying, snot running down his face, begging me to tell them it was a joke. I watched Elaine struggling, shouting about her rights, shouting that I was a liar, shouting that I had set them up. I looked at them, but I didn't see my parents anymore. I saw 2 strangers who had rented space in my life for 33 years. Sterling stood up and nodded to me. "We have it all on tape, Ms. Rourke, the admission of the timeline, the financial motive, the insistence on the death. It is over." I looked at Elaine as the officer pushed her toward the door. She twisted her head back to look at me one last time. "We gave you everything," she screamed. "We gave you a life." "No," I said softly, though I knew she couldn't hear me over her own screaming. "You gave me a backpack." Elaine dropped the pen. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen, the kind used for signing treaties or multi-million-dollar contracts. It hit the mahogany table with a sharp crack that sounded like a gunshot in the hermetically sealed room, then rolled slowly toward the edge, dripping a single spot of black ink onto the pristine legal pad. Gordon made a sound that I can only describe as a deflating tire. All the air left his lungs in a rush, his chest collapsing as he slumped back into the leather chair. His face, which had been flushed with righteous indignation moments ago, was now the color of wet ash. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. I did not scream. I did not leap across the table to strangle the woman who gave birth to me. I simply stood there, anchoring my feet to the floor, feeling the weight of the last 4 days evaporate. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. All that was left was a cold, crystalline clarity. "I opened the backpack," I said. My voice was low, steady, and devoid of any tremor. "I opened the backpack you prepared for Evan." Elaine stared at me. Her mouth worked silently, opening and closing like a fish pulled from the water. She looked at the door behind me, then back at my face, trying to solve an equation that had no solution. "You," she whispered, her voice rasping. "You are dead. The police said, the crash." "The police lied to you," I said. "Just like you lied to me about Evan. Just like you lied to the insurance company about the route. Just like you lied to yourself when you thought you could kill your daughter and get away with it." Detective Vega stepped forward, bypassing me to stand directly behind my parents' chairs. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. She held a warrant in her hand, and the authority radiating off her was terrifying. "Gordon Rourke, Elaine Rourke," Vega stated, her voice filling the room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit capital murder, first-degree insurance fraud, and the possession and transport of an explosive device." The words hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. "Explosive?" Gordon squeaked. He looked at Elaine, his eyes wide and wet with panic. I didn't set the timer. Elaine, you said it was just a failsafe. You said the steering lock would do it." "Shut up!" Elaine shrieked, her composure shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. She turned on him, her face twisted into a mask of pure venom. "Shut your mouth, you idiot! Do not say another word!" "He doesn't have to," Vega said, signaling to the uniformed officers waiting in the hallway. They marched in, the jingle of handcuffs cutting through the tension. "We have the device. We have the fingerprints on the casing. We have the purchase history for the mercury switch. And thanks to your little performance in the kitchen over the last 3 days, we have you on tape discussing the timeline of the payout." As the officers pulled them up from their chairs, a second man entered the room. He was wearing a suit, carrying a thick binder. I recognized him as the forensic accountant Vega had mentioned. "There is one more thing," the accountant said, looking at Gordon with disgust. "Mr. Rourke, we found the paperwork in your safe, the loan documents." Gordon went limp in the officer's grip. "What loan documents?" Elaine snapped, even as her hands were being cuffed behind her back. "We have mortgages. Everyone knows that." "Not mortgages," the accountant corrected. "High-interest private loans, promissory notes to unauthorized lenders. But you didn't sign them with your name. Gordon, you signed them with Evans." I felt my breath catch. I looked at Gordon. "You stole his identity?" I asked, the horror of it hitting me in a fresh wave. "He is young," Gordon blubbered, tears streaming down his face. "He has good credit. I just needed a bridge loan. I was going to pay it back with your insurance money. Sam, I swear, I was going to clear his name as soon as the check cleared." Elaine stopped struggling. She turned her head slowly to look at her husband. The look on her face was not betrayal. It was realization. "You idiot," she hissed. "You leveraged the boy? You put the debt on the boy?" "I had to," Gordon screamed at her. "You kept buying properties. You kept spending. I was drowning. Elaine, I needed liquidity." "You ruined the plan," Elaine screamed back, lunging at him, restrained only by the officer holding her arm. "I wrote the script perfectly. I set up the call. I made sure she took the car. I did everything right, and you ruined it because you are a weak, pathetic gambler." They were eating each other alive, right there in the conference room, surrounded by police and lawyers. They were tearing each other apart. There was no love. There was no loyalty. There was only the desperate, clawing instinct of rats on a sinking ship. "Enough," Vega barked. "Get them out of here." But before they could drag them to the elevators, the door to the side room opened one last time. Evan walked in. He looked small. He looked younger than his 24 years, wearing a hoodie that seemed too big for him now. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. He had been watching the feed. He had heard everything. He had heard his father admit to stealing his name. He had heard his mother admit to writing the script for my murder. The room fell silent again. Gordon stopped crying. He looked at his son, offering a pathetic, trembling smile. "Evan," Gordon whispered. "Son, listen to me. It is complicated. Business is hard." Evan didn't look at Gordon. He looked at Elaine. "You sent her," Evan said. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried across the room. "You called her. You told me she was coming to visit, but you sent her to die." "It was for us," Elaine pleaded, her eyes wild. "Evan, baby, look at the house. Look at the life we have. We were going to lose it all. We did it for the family. We did it for you." "For me?" Evan laughed, a broken, jagged sound. "You stole my identity. Dad, you tried to blow up my sister. Mom, you didn't do it for me. You did it because you are monsters." He turned his back on them. Get them out of my sight, Evan said to Vega. No, Evan, don't you turn your back on me, Elaine screamed as the officers dragged her toward the door. I am your mother. I gave you life. Ungrateful. Both of you. Ungrateful. Her screams echoed down the hallway, fading as the elevator doors dinged and closed. Then there was silence. The insurance investigator, Sterling, cleared his throat. He looked pale. He closed the folder on the table and pushed it aside. I am freezing all assets associated with the Rourke Family Trust immediately, Sterling said quietly. We will be cooperating fully with the district attorney. The policy is null and void due to fraudulent intent. And Ms. Rourke, I am profoundly sorry. I nodded. I didn't care about the policy. I didn't care about the money. I walked over to Evan. He was standing by the window, staring out at the Phoenix skyline, shaking uncontrollably. He looked like he was about to shatter. I reached out and wrapped my arms around him. He flinched at first, expecting a blow, expecting another lie, but then he collapsed into me. He buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed. It wasn't the polite crying of a funeral. It was the ugly, raw weeping of a child who has just realized he is an orphan. I am sorry, he choked out. I am so sorry, Sam. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, I whispered, holding him tighter than I had ever held anything in my life. I know. They are gone, he said. We have no one. I pulled back and held his face in my hands. I made him look at me. No, I said firmly. They are gone, but we are not. I am here. You are here. We have the house in Henderson. I have my job. We will figure out the debt. We will figure out your credit. But we are not alone. I wiped a tear from his cheek with my thumb. I still have you, I said. And you still have me. That is enough. That has to be enough. Detective Vega walked over to us. She held a small USB drive in her hand. This is for you, she said, handing it to me. It is the recording from the wiretap yesterday, the one where Elaine explains the plan to Gordon. It is the piece of evidence that makes sure they never see a parole board. She paused, her expression softening. There is a line in there, Vega said. Your mother says, we just need Sam to disappear, and then we are free. I want you to keep that, not to hurt yourself, but to remember why you did this. You didn't just survive an accident. Sam, you survived a war. I took the drive. I closed my fingers around it. It felt light, insignificant, but it contained the truth. Thank you, I said, for believing me, for saving me. You saved yourself, Vega said. I just drove the car. She signaled to the door. You are free to go. We will handle the booking. Go home, Samantha. Take your brother home. We walked out of the building 10 minutes later. The heat of Phoenix hit us like a physical wall. It was 105 degrees. The sun was blinding, bleaching the color out of the concrete and the glass. It was harsh, unforgiving, and absolutely beautiful. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment. People were rushing past us. Businessmen in suits, tourists in shorts, people living their normal, messy, safe lives. They had no idea that 2 blocks away, a police cruiser was transporting 2 people who had traded their children's souls for a credit line. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of asphalt and dust. It smelled like freedom. I looked at Evan. He was squinting against the glare, looking lost. Where do we go? He asked. We go get lunch, I said. Then we drive home, and then we start over. I heard a siren wail in the distance, followed by the faint, metallic click of a heavy door slamming shut. It was the sound of a chapter ending. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't look back at the past. I took my brother's hand, gripped it tight, and stepped off the curb. For the first time in 33 years, I understood what family really meant. It wasn't the blood that ran through your veins. It wasn't the people who shared your last name or sat at your Thanksgiving table. Family was the person who stood beside you when the world burned down. Family was the person you decided to protect, no matter the cost. And as we walked into the blinding light of the afternoon, I knew one thing for certain. The backpack was gone, the burden was gone, and we were still here. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a wild ride from that first gas station stop all the way to this final moment in Phoenix, and I am so glad you stuck with Sam and Evan until the end. I would love to know where you guys are tuning in from. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe winding down before bed? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and what you thought of that final twist with the parents. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. Smash that like button and hit the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people who love a good drama. Your support means the world to us. Stay safe, and see you in the next story.